And so he has no other choice than to play himself right now because he can count on himself for production. Got a last minute goal on Saturday to give him 2 for the game, but ultimately he knows he can score. And I don't think he has the luxury right now, Alex, to keep himself out of the lineup.
What's going on, everybody? This is MASL Monday. Alex Bastyovanszky here. Hope everyone had a great weekend and tons to cover on today's show. And joining me is the color commentator for the Kansas City Comets, the partner in crime for Nick Vassos, of course, who we've had on the show a couple times. But it's Mr. Erik Bergrud. Erik, how you doing, man?
It's great to be on here. We've never met before. Really appreciate everything you do for the league, and see you at halftime. And I watch your show every week, and it's great to be on here.
And you pronounce my name right every time. And why do you do that? We just discussed this off air.
Because I have a pronunciation guide. So when I do the official reads from the league, I always have an MASL Monday. And so I have you there every single game.
Spelled phonetically, sounded out for exactly, he never messes it up. And I do appreciate that. And I had to ask for proper pronunciation of his name to make sure I didn't get Bergrud wrong, just because, you know what, as someone named Bastyovanszky, I respect the proper pronunciation, and I butcher enough of the Spanish names in the league that, darn it, I wanted to make sure I get everyone right when I can. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Big game for you guys that went down, taking on Tacoma, and going down to the Stars 7-5. And I mean, they'd only played 2 games this season up to this point. You'd played much more. So we can look at it from 2 different respects. Number one, you could say that maybe they should have been rusty. On the other hand, we could say that they were well rested in comparison to you guys. But let's talk about this. 7-5. Ultimately, you guys go down. What did you see in that contest?
So yes, and everything you said, Alex. I think Tacoma hadn't played. Kansas City had played a lot of games. I think Tacoma had a lot of time to watch game film. I guess you still call it game film, and exploited some weaknesses, I think, that they found. They stymied Kansas City. They frustrated Kansas City. And I think Kansas City was shocked to come into halftime down the way they were. And when I was on the field, I asked assistant coach Stefan Stokic what adjustments you're going to make, because clearly they need to make adjustments. And he said that we have to be more aggressive in the second half. They were, but it wasn't enough. I think that Tacoma's game plan was sharp. I do think they were fresher. And when you have a legendary goalkeeper, spent a lot of time in Kansas City, knows the Comets, 41-year-old Danny Waltman recording 28 saves, that's a career night for most goalkeepers in this league or any league.
And that was like a homecoming for him. Of course, he won the title with you guys in 2014. And you can't say enough about Danny Waltman. When I've had Nick Perera on the show before, he can't say enough good things about his keeper. Still a legend at 41 years of age. A couple things. Leo Gibson mentioned before the start of the season that he was going to maybe step back a little bit this year and more time behind the bench, maybe not as much time on the floor. Is he going to have to submit himself a lot? I mean, he's played 7 of 9 games. And as you mentioned before the show started, one of those games was a suspension why he couldn't play. So he's only missed the home opener so far. In your opinion, should Leo be inserting himself into the lineup, Coach Leo, the player, every time?
So I've been thinking about this question, Alex, because Comets fans, as you might imagine, are frustrated. They had big expectations. The defending Central Division, former Central Division champions, love to say 2-time Central Cup champions. But Leo has a decision, because right now he's their best target player. Rion Marks has been hurt. He's you can see it out there. He's not 100%. And so he has no other choice than to play himself right now, because he can count on himself for production. Got a last-minute goal on Saturday to give him 2 for the game, but ultimately he knows he can score, and I don't think he has the luxury right now, Alex, to keep himself out of the lineup.
Yeah, 9 points in 7 games so far this year. Real quick, though, you've gotten fantastic production from the duo of Sosa and Souza so far, though, haven't you? I mean, Souza as a defender being one of the top goal scorers or top scorers in general. Gordy Gerson knocked him off this week, but he's just been outstanding for you offensively as well as defensively.
Yeah, and I think that the teams are watching this. If you watch our broadcast, Nick Vassos and me, we've been talking about the back line and the midfield being where the production is. So you mentioned John Sosa, Nick, James Togba last week was Defensive Player of the Week, but scored a couple goals too. And in addition to Lucas Sosa, Nacho Flores has been banging in goals in the midfield. And so they're finding different ways to score, but that's not what we've been used to in Kansas City. We're used to Leo and the forwards just banging in goals after goals and running up 10-goal games. So I told some frustrated Comets fans over the weekend, you're not going to win many games in this league if you only score 4 or 5 goals.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's one positive to take away from this is some of the production you have been getting from your back line. And if your offense hasn't gotten going yet, considering the fact that you guys have still got a positive record so far, there's a lot to look forward to if you guys can get things going in that regard.
So my top line analysis of the Comets is this. Really what matters is, are you ready to make the playoffs? Are you ready to compete in the playoffs? And one of the challenges for the Comets the last couple years is the ability to win on the road. Yeah. If you look at the dominating teams of the Comets in the last decade, and you mentioned the 2014 championship, they went into everybody's arena. That could be Pechanga Arena, that could be Arena Monterrey, and they felt like they were going to win.
Yeah.
It hasn't felt that way in recent years, and that's what the Comets need to prove, not only to the rest of the league, but to themselves, that they can go into anybody's arena and they're going to be a threat.
Before we move on to the next game, we just have to mention real quick one of the goals of the year so far, scored by Nick Perera. And man, he did it against the reigning Defensive Player of the Week in James Togba. Sorry, James, but turned it inside out. I mean, that is just a classic Nick Perera type of goal, making something out of nothing. I mean, you had a front row seat for that, and just what an incredible goal.
It's right in front of us on our side of the field. And I felt badly about it because I have a tendency to start in a story when there's a lull in action. And he scored so quickly, I didn't even finish my thought, but it was such a quick turn. And then his reaction where he's kind of like shaking or nodding his head like, I know I had the goal of the week. Yeah. We could talk about that later.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm Nick Perera. What did you expect? Something else? Come on, right? Let's move on to the Battle of Mexico. Of course, Chihuahua did host Monterrey earlier on in the season. Monterrey spoiled their home opener. Now it was the Flash with their home opener, and Chihuahua waltzes in and spoils that. First of all, though, let's just touch on the fact that what a great moment it was for Monterrey, their first home opener, first home game in 3 seasons now, of course, because they were dormant for the last 2 years. Great to see the Battle of Mexico renewing once again, and great to see Monterrey in what was always called the MASL Fortress, right? And that beautiful big arena they've got with those passionate home fans. Great to see them hosting a home game once again.
Passionate home fans. Chili Willy was back. You would think, hey, here's a team that went into Chihuahua, which is a difficult place to play, and grind it out an overtime win. But this is MASL, and you can't just assume that results in one game translate into the next game, and you can't just assume that, hey, we'll come back home and everything will be easy. I thought Chihuahua played a terrific game yesterday. They were great on set pieces. They exploited some space on the back post, at least on one power play goal, and I think there were a couple goals there. And I think Chihuahua saw some things that they learned from that first game they brought into this game. And I've seen Monterrey in person. They have a lot of talent on that team. In the preseason, when I talked to a couple of the Comets players, what's the team that might compete with San Diego? They told me Chihuahua.
Chihuahua over Monterrey. Well, it was a tight game. It was an overtime game in Chihuahua. The Monterrey won 7-2 though. Chihuahua takes it. That turned my head for sure. I wasn't quite expecting that score. But we saw this last year from Chihuahua, the firepower they've got, how cohesive they can be. But quite an interesting scoreline, wasn't it?
It was. And I think that both Chihuahua and Baltimore get a bad rap. People talk about their home fields being so small and talk about the home field advantage. But Baltimore traditionally was a dominant road team. And I think Chihuahua showed last year, once they got the team together, they could go into anybody's arena and win. We saw that. Nick Vassos and I saw that. They came into Kansas City and not just beat us on the score line, but beat us.
Yeah.
And this is a team that can compete across the league.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Empire Strykers, who are starting to get things going now, as we expected them to do. There's too many good offensive options on this team to not finally get things going, because 11 straight they'd lost going back into last season, 8 last season, 3 to start this year. They finally started to get things going now. They won 2 of their last 3, and the biggie was taking down the Florida Tropics at home in Ontario, 11-7 on Tuesday. And that's another one that turned some heads this week. I mean, Florida's supposed to be the beast of the East, and they go down to an Empire squad that hadn't quite gotten things going yet. Your take on that?
I wasn't surprised by any of the results. I expected them to beat Florida at home. I expected them to have a challenge at Baltimore, and I expected them to win at Utica. So they delivered, I guess, in a way. I think with Empire, and there are a few other teams that fit in this category. We'll talk about Utica later. Is Empire likes to just blow teams away in terms of, we're going to just outscore you. Yeah. And I think when the goals don't come, they tend to be susceptible. They're susceptible to being counterattacked and getting a little bit frustrated. And so when all cylinders are clicking, they're a team to watch out for.
And Moendi in game 2 in Baltimore, the 6-4 loss in Baltimore, getting 2 goals. If Mo really starts getting going, watch out.
Well, and playing on the back line too. And so they're trying to find a way to get, how do you take all these players, new players, old players, and find time for them? So they're getting pretty creative about where they slot them in the lineup.
And let's mention Gabriel Acosta in the first game. 3 goals, 1 assist, first star of the game. He has been outstanding so far. 13 points in 6 games. Is Costa your front runner for the rookie of the year right now, Erik?
I think so. And some of those goals are bangers. And so what's been great to watch about this league in the last several years is the ability to identify talent. We saw the league make a further contribution with the combine, saying there are great players out there, but these teams have been able to identify great talent. Maybe the average fan hasn't heard of them, but when you see them on the field, I think about a Lucas Sosa here in Kansas City, who was rookie of the year. There's these midfielders that are making their statements across the league. Maybe not household names when they come in the league, but all of a sudden when you watch them a couple of times and Costa fits in that category, you're going to be mentioning his name again and again and again. And
we see last season's rookie of the year, Luis Morales, what he's doing so far, which we will get to momentarily. But yeah, but anyway, so 2-1 for Empire last week. Win in Utica as well on Sunday at 8-5. Costa didn't actually end up making the trip out east, though, which is interesting. We don't know why he didn't end up making it out, but so interesting. Anyway, that they were missing him for those games.
But you also see how much firepower they have, where they can be down a player or 2 and still produce results. And what's critical is we head into January and through February. Not every team is going to have a full roster. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have people that are managing their minutes. And so the coaches that have these options, it just gives them an advantage where they don't have to play the same 16 every game.
Yeah. And just a reminder for everyone that highlights for all these games will be posted soon on our YouTube channel, MASL TV. And for this show, like, rate, subscribe, please. Comment down below. Let us know what you think. If you agree or disagree with what you're saying, we love the interaction. We want to hear what you're saying. And also, of course, to watch games. If you want to watch the full games, head on to Twitch. Watch games live. Watch the archive. It's your key to all MASL action. So I had to get that in. Don't forget all that good stuff. And let's move to San Diego and Dallas. And I mean, of all the things that Dallas could have asked for after an 0-4 start, the last thing that they wanted was to have to face the 2-time defending reigning champion, 16-time all-time Sockers, and that's what they ended up doing, and it did not turn out well. And Dallas now 0-6 on the season so far, Erik.
Well, you talk about rosters and options. Ricardinho lost a core of players to the Mesquite Outlaws. You mentioned Luis Morales, the reigning rookie of the year.
And it still stings.
Yeah, how things might be different for Dallas if they were able to retain that core. And so you get the Sockers, no big surprise on the scores. Sockers don't care where they play. And in some cases, they put up more goals on the road than they do at Pachanga. And so I was a little bit surprised on Sunday to see Dallas hang in there as long as they did.
Yeah.
Buttressed by a worldy goal, I guess, by Jamie Lovegrove.
Oh,
I picked him as MVP. I didn't wind up voting for him in the end, but I talked him up throughout the year because Dallas's run last year, for me, were two players, Jamie Lovegrove and the leadership that he showed, and he's the captain this year, and Juan Gamboa. And that team, I know the fans are frustrated. They had hope last year, and this year they're looking for answers.
Well, they started really slow last year. Then they made trades and they made a coaching change, and they really came on strong. After about 7-8 games into the season, they had a great run of games. So I can understand the disappointment because, as you say, they were hoping for more this year. So 0-6, nowhere to go but up for the sidekicks right now. And there was the Lovegrove goal, which we'll also talk about a bit later because I have a feeling that's your goal of the week. I mean, that's one of the goals of the year as well. So but San Diego, we should mention as well, 25 now games straight they have not lost in regulation. Just the team that just keeps on chugging along, producing great talent and winning titles.
Well, and I have this interesting relationship with the Sockers because I've been following them for eons, and yes, they're 16-time champions. And I think you and Phil were projecting MVPs last week. I could make a strong case for Boris Pardo. I know that he hasn't played as many games as other teams like Kansas City has, but if he keeps shutting down teams the way he does, and if he ends the season under 4.0 goals against average, I could make a strong case that he should be the MVP. I'm sure Ian Bennett's watching this and raising his hand and saying, hey, I'll be there at the end. But that defense is really, really difficult to pick apart. And I think that's the key to San Diego's success, particularly in recent years.
I think that's also the problem with because Pardo absolutely should be up there in the conversation. I think people look at just how strong San Diego's roster is, though, and the players he's got in front of him. And it's unfortunate because he doesn't get. I mean, he's goalie of the week and stuff like that. But in the grand scheme of things, if you talk to the Sockers, they will absolutely tell you that Pardo is their main man. And they have so much confidence being able to do what they can do because they know the rock between the posts that's behind them.
Something that Nick Vassos and I love doing on our broadcast is talking about history. And San Diego has two goalkeepers who are also MVPs. Kansas City's current goalkeeper coach, Alan Mayer, and Victor Noguera. And so this could be the year for the third MVP goalie of the San Diego Sockers. It's really early. We're in January, but wait until March. If things stay the same, I think you can make a strong case for him.
Excellent. We'll have to touch back on that come March. And big game for you guys coming up. This is the ultimate test so far for the Comets this season. You will be there, sir, in San Diego on Sunday for that huge game.
So last year, it was a big matchup. Kansas City was the top team in the Central Division, and Kansas City loves to play aggressively on defense. They spent a lot of time in the penalty box. They racked up more than 40 minutes of penalties. I think they're going to have to play a different game to have a chance against the Sockers there. Can you beat San Diego? Yes, you can, but you have to be very disciplined defensively, and you need to be very disciplined mentally. And I think that's what the Comets need to work on and focus on this week.
Okay, let's really quick go over a couple more games that went down. And we should spend more time on this than just a quick comment. But Utica taking down Mesquite 9-8 in overtime. Gordy Gerson with the game-winning goal. Gordy Gerson, by the way, who now sits atop the MASL scoring lead. He's tied with a couple other guys, but fantastic stuff. And, of course, that is Mesquite's first loss in regulation. Pardon me. That is, their first loss of the season. And huge stuff because the East has been taking a beating at the hands of the West so far this year. Now, pardon me, it was an overtime win, but Mesquite has looked so strong this year. That is a huge win for Utica. It gets them going in the right direction. and certainly opens eyes around the league, wouldn't you say?
I think so. And for all the criticism I think Gordy's gotten from fans, he's bounced around teams. He has found a home in Utica. He feels comfortable there. You can just tell his expression on the field. He wants to play there and he wants to win for those fans. So good for him that he had that moment there, game 1 of 2 for them this weekend.
And he had one of the goals of the week as well, a beautiful shot from just inside midfield, actually top corner. Yeah, Gordy's doing a great job so far. Milwaukee 8-2 over St. Louis. Ian Bennett continues to roll, as does Andre Hain, who's done a great job this season so far as well. Second in scoring for the Milwaukee Wave so far. Bennett Haney, who was one of the biggest pickups in the offseason for any team that the Wave got, 12 saves so far. Let's just quickly talk about as well, because Phil was talking last week about, he's from the Show Me State. No, he's not. He's really from the Empire State. He's a New York boy. But he wants to see it to believe it when it comes to these Eastern teams. And he thinks Milwaukee's record so far is maybe a bit of a mirage. They're 4-0-1. Milwaukee has a chance to silence their critics coming up this week. The big game, everyone, if you can't be there in person, tune in on Twitch, when they host Monterey. That is just a titanic tilt, Erik.
Oh, I think so too. So we talked earlier about Monterey. They got rocked at home. This is a professional team that I'm sure does not want to put up a bad performance in Milwaukee. They've proven they can win on the road, and I expect them to come in there expecting to win, expecting to play a great game in Milwaukee. Milwaukee used to have a swagger at home. Last year was a down year for them. I think they found it back. The fans believe, the players believe. Willie B in goal. I think they have the goalkeeper that they need to take the next step as a franchise. You mentioned Ian Bennett. He keeps scoring. And Andre Hain had a great homecoming. He played college soccer in St. Charles at Lindenwood. Loves coming back there. I think they have the elements, but this will be a test game, not just for the Eastern Conference, but specifically for Milwaukee.
Right. Another big one, Utica taking on St. Louis. And that is going to be sort of just a dogfight to the end this year, trying to qualify for an Eastern playoff spot. There's a lot on the line, even though we're still relatively early into the season. There's a lot on the line in that game, isn't there?
So I'll admit, after Kansas City lost to Tacoma, I took a look at the rules again. What's the playoff format this year? Just kind of curious. And so 5 teams in each conference will qualify. The 4th seed and the 5th seed will play each other first, and then the winner of that will get the 1st seed. And so right now, St. Louis and Utica look like they're battling for that 5th seed in the East. And so this is a statement game for whomever wins that game.
Right. As the clock winds down here, let's just talk about the power structure East and West right now, because the Florida loss to Empire, a lot of people thought, and we've had this conversation on the show, that Florida, we still kind of thought were the one team that was a bit separate from the others. They certainly were last year in the East. It's not looking that way so far this year, though. And that Empire game really sort of is exposing the imbalance of power, perhaps, between the East and the West this year, because you've got 4 teams in the West that we look at in Mesquite, San Diego, Chihuahua, Monterey, although Empire has more points right now. Empire's played 3 more games than Monterey has. But I think we all see those 4 teams as being real next level teams out West. What can we say about the East right now with the West teams doing so well against the Eastern Conference teams thus far, Erik?
Let me answer it in a nuanced way, Alex. Practically, it doesn't matter. Psychologically, it might. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So with the way that the league created a schedule this year, 24 games, each team plays 20 games within its conference and 4 games outside of its conference. So in a case of a team like Kansas City, after that game at San Diego, they don't have to play any Western Conference teams the rest of the regular season. So that's done. But psychologically, if you're, say, the Florida Tropics and you were planning to return to the finals, you have to go into that final series believing you can win on the road.
Yeah.
And so that for me is the bigger challenge, because there will be an imbalance at the end of the season. There will be fans in the West, particularly of that 6th team in the West, who didn't make it, say, hey, this isn't fair. If we had a single table or we were in the East, we'd be in the playoffs right now. Well, unfortunately, that's the way the structure was set up this year. And it may be that the 6th team in the West is a really, really good team. You haven't mentioned Tacoma yet.
No, we haven't seen enough of Tacoma. That's the thing, right? I mean, but it's, as we mentioned, opening eyes with the win over you guys last weekend. So let's finish things off with your goal of the week, Erik. Which way? There's always a lot of good stuff to pick from, but which one are you taking?
Well, I was going to pick the one that happened right in front of me, but I can't resist Jamie Lovegrove, who was my sentimental pick for MVP last year. Boris Pardo does not give up goals like that usually, but Lovegrove just kind of like took one. He got past the yellow line and just decided to uncork one, chip Boris Pardo. That shows a couple things. One, his confidence. The fact that the captain of the team believes in himself that much to take that shot and it went in, it inspires confidence in his teammates. And for me, that doesn't mean they're going to win, but we saw last year's goal of the year, Benji Monreal against Dallas. Everybody talks about it. Who won that game? Dallas won that game. And so this is a celebration of a terrific goal.
Talk about threading the needle on that one. I mean, zero room for error, tucks it right under the bar. Beautiful goal. I'm going to go with Nick's. I am. It was just it's a fantastic solo move again on the reigning defensive player of the week in Togba. Sorry, James. I know I brought that up twice now, but I say that out of respect because Togba is such a good defensive player. And Nick, the ageless wonder doing what he does, just an incredible goal. And what's your favorite moment of the week then, Erik? Which one are you picking?
So we talked about Gordy Gerson earlier. For me, it's watching him celebrate after the overtime game winner, taking his shirt off. And he's been coast to coast on teams in this league. And for that moment, for him to be the star and to just celebrate that moment and what it meant for him, for that franchise, for that fan base, for me, that was the moment of the week.
It was a great goal. I love the reaction by the crowd, just the Utica crowd, always so into it. I'm personally going to go with the sentimental one, and that was, the return of the Battle of Mexico in Monterrey, first home game in 3 seasons. Watching the Mexican players on both sides, obviously the national anthem at the beginning, it just gives you butterflies. It was an emotional moment there in Monterrey. It is so great for arena soccer and the MASL having 2 Mexican teams back in the league again after all that everyone's been through over the last couple of years. It's also just another sign that it's full steam ahead. We've recovered, we're moving forward, and it was great to see. And to me, that was my moment of the week. So, but what a week it was, man. What a week it was. Big games, big goals. And the week ahead is going to really tell an interesting story about, for a lot of teams. And can't wait for your game in San Diego on Sunday, my friend. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I'm going to be a fan that day. It's going to be fun to watch. Every time I've been to a game at Pechanga Arena, the Sockers have won. We'll see if that holds true this weekend.
All right. And just once again, everyone, thank you for watching. A reminder, please like, rate, subscribe, comment. We love to get the comments in there and see what you guys think about what we're saying. And all games can be watched once again on Twitch, live and archived. Of course, Erik, have a safe trip and good luck in San Diego.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me on the show. I watch it every week. I appreciate everything that you and Phil do, and look forward to being a fan again of this show next week.
Excellent. And say hello to our friend Nick Vassals, please, as well for us. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We will see you next Monday.